BassEdge Radio. You're listening to The Edge. Everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from Megaware KeelGuard Studios.
Aaron, I think May 15th is the COVID tax day. Is it May 15th or June 15th?
I think it's May 16th or May 17th, actually.
So you better have your COVID taxes completed because the extensions are done.
That's right. That's right.
Welcome to the May 15th. We'll just call it Tax Day episode of BassEdge Radio. Great to be back on the mic with you, Aaron.
It is great to be back. And Kurt, Megaware KeelGuard proudly supporting BassEdge Radio from day one. Make sure, for all of those people in BassEdge Nation who've heard us say this many times, be sure to log on to KeelGuard.com. The first do-it-yourself keel protector, the flex step, the battery guards, pontoon guard, anything that a personal watercraft or your boat needs, Megaware has a solution for a problem that probably most of us have faced. So again, be sure to log on to KeelGuard.com.
Guys, it is that time of year that there's a lot of tactics in play right now. Aaron, up north, you still got the spawn going on. You know, down south, you got post spawn. A lot of fish still shallow, though, this time of year. And that excites me, Aaron. I got to just tell everybody what my favorite lure has been over the last couple weeks and probably will be through the early part of June. Man, there is nothing like a frog bite. I just love getting a frog bite. I can skip it underneath willow trees. I can throw it up in the willow grass. You're really starting to get some of that vegetation growth coming along too. So you're starting to see some matted vegetation out there, like milfoil starting to mat up a little. You know, especially just like on river systems, you know, that grass seems to grow a lot quicker earlier in the year.
So are you throwing a hollow body or a swimming frog, or what's kind of your thoughts there?
Man, my thoughts are if I get bit on the hollow body, that's the most fun.
Absolutely.
That is the most fun. I like also, Bill mentioned it last episode, I like the Optima Baits frog. It's a great frog. But and there's a lot of good frogs out there on the market. That Optima, a little bit bigger profile. But the whole key with it, Aaron, is the explosion. The strike. You get a great strike with the moving frogs too. You know, the buzz frogs. You know,
but you don't get that like where the mat like bulges up, right? You can see it starts shaking, and then all of a sudden it's just like somebody threw a Volkswagen in the water.
It's too much fun, bro. Way too much fun. So that's my favorite technique to, you know, if I want to go out and just have fun, I could just throw it all day for like, you know, 6 or 8 bites. It's just fun. I just love it. Just love the frog bite this time of year. And it's so many different tactics that or techniques or seasonal behavior patterns, I guess I should say, that it cross references. Not necessarily shad spawn a whole lot, but man, I can skip it up back underneath the backside of docks. I can throw it like I talked about earlier around, you know, vegetation, any kind of vegetation, but also throwing it under underhanging trees later in the day. Those bass want to seek that shade that are still up shallow. So a lot of great ways to fish a frog. Aaron, what's your favorite technique this time of year?
Well, since you kind of covered the topwater, certainly topwater, and I concur, your frog is certainly one of my favorites. Topwater in general is just absolutely, you know, fantastic because of the visual aspect. You know, Kurt, but I've got to tell you, right now, square bill is kind of where it's at for me, like a 2.5, and reason being is because I can cover so much water. Additionally, a lot of fish, you know, kind of this middle of May, at least in the part of the country that I'm in, you've got, you know, the shad spawn, you know, maybe perhaps coming to an end, the brim, but just a lot of, I believe, strikes that you can draw because they're keying in on kind of that bait fish style, right? And I can change colors to mimic the bluegill. I can keep it more shad based, but I like throwing that just kind of, you know, against any woods, any rocks, making it kind of deflect and bounce off and try to get that reaction strike. But that's my go-to bait, Kurt.
Yeah. I think your tip there on the deflection is super key, and that can create so many strikes. You know, a lot of times people get shy about throwing into or close to and all around the cover. And, you know, sometimes they get a little frustrated from getting hung up. And that's part of bass fishing. I just got to say this real quick because your tip there on the deflection is so important, and you will not deflect it if you're throwing a foot or two away from a piece of cover because you're trying. That's exactly right, because you're trying not to hang up your bait or whatever. So awesome tip right there. 2 great tactics to use this time of year. We've got at protecttheharvest.com tackle tip before we move into the next segment of the show. So y'all stay tuned, listen up. Here's another tackle tip. We'll be right back with Seg B of BassEdge Radio, May 15th, 2021. In this episode's ProtectTheHarvest.com tackle tip, got MLF Big 5 Pro Circuit Angler, Cole Floyd.
How's it going? Yeah, I'm going to give a little tip on some summertime flipping. One of my favorite things to do is flipping all year, and I don't care if it's summertime, wintertime, springtime. It works everywhere around the world. And, living on Kentucky Lake for 5 years, and you got them summer dog days, be June, July, heck, even August, It gets better as it gets hotter, honestly. But one little tip I like to use, which I used the last couple of years on Kentucky Lake, was flipping main lake willow trees and bushes in the summertime. There's just something about in the summertime, you got them fish offshore, and it works everywhere on the Tennessee River and even on, other lakes. Them fish get heavily pressured, getting that time, everyone gets out there and starts graphing them. And that's one of my things. I like to go up shallow. I like to throw top water. I like to swim a raised bug around on a wobble head sometimes, just swimming around, willow trees and throw a frog around them. Early summer, you got some lake spawners, the fry garters and stuff like that. But that's one of my, things I like to do is get up there, flip a raised bug around, bushes. Sometimes you get a lake spawner. I like to flip everywhere around the world, so it works year-round.
Sounds great, Cole. Awesome tip. We're going to flip them up. Brought to you by ProtectTheHarvest.com.
First by land and now by sea. For years, Lucas Oil has been a staple in high-performance vehicles on both the road and track. Now, from the makers of Lucas Oil comes Lucas Marine products, specifically engineered for marine applications. Protect and lubricate your marine inboard, outboard, or high-performance boat with Lucas Marine Engine Oil or Lucas Synthetic-Based Oil. Learn more about the complete line of Lucas Oil and marine products. Visit lucasoil.com.
Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Get pro-level performance with the Nitro Z18, the official boat of Major League Fishing. The Z18, with its nimble handling and versatility, sports many of the features in the larger boats in the line, like a Guardian Live Well, a heavily insulated cooler, dual 8-foot rod storage, and our smooth and fast NVT hull. Every Nitro boat is laid out to do one thing very well: catch fish. Enormous front decks, up to 45 square feet on the Z21, allow maximum mobility when battling unruly bass, and feature low-profile gunnels for ease of skipping, pitching, flipping, or landing fish. Nitro Performance Bass Boats, pure fishing machines.
Aaron, I get a kick out of our friend Jay Kumar, the Bass Blaster. If you're not a part of the Bass Blaster email thread, you need to get on it. Just simply send an email to Jay Kumar. It's bassblaster@bassgold.com. Fire Jay over an email. Tell him you want to get the newsletter. Comes out a few times a week. And Aaron, the coolest thing is earlier this month, he brought back the derps. Right?
Oh, yes.
I love the derps, man. Kumar has really made this into a cult deal to an extent, and I love it. So he brought it back, the first derps of the year, and I just love watching it. And then so many crazy little tidbits, man. He's got this deal on here. Again, this was earlier in May, but he's got this deal that he talks about a glide bait that's for sale on Tackle Warehouse for a little over $1,000. And it's a 43-ounce glide bait. It's made out of leather. There's leather in it. He talks about how when it absorbs leather, it sinks better or something. I mean, dude, and he's got a lot of legit info with links to, just industry news, industry knowledge. But it's a fun newsletter if you're a bass fisherman.
I think the thing I most appreciated about it, Kurt, is just even after us doing 352 episodes, as of today, you begin to wonder, it's like, okay, how much can you really cover on bass fishing? But Jay has this way of creating this entertainment piece to making it kind of, artistic on how he writes, to also, delivers the goods with the latest tackle information and techniques. So anyway, I always enjoy Jay's stuff.
Yeah, me too. Love it. Make sure y'all check it out, the Bass Blaster, and you can simply send an email to Jay Kumar, bassblaster@bassgold.com. Be a part of the gang. It's a fun gang to hang with.
Yeah, speaking of checking out, Kurt, one of the things I want to just briefly mention, because as I know you get the reports just like I do, but BassEdge website's been heating up quite well. I mean, obviously the Lucas Oil, that's been free shipping forever. But then, with the BassEdge apparel, that stuff, I'm kind of thinking reorders on the horizon. So if you don't have the BassEdge apparel, be sure to check out the different t-shirt lineups and also the hats. And then, Kurt, the Pure Clean Descaler. It's that time of year where the heat is kind of picking up. You pull your boat out of the water, and certainly the hard water, at least in the area that I'm at and that you're at. But what a great product to keep those black motors and power poles and your boats, that hard water, from really just kind of caking up on there and giving it that dull look. So, and there's also a lot of household projects that I've actually found for that as well. So two things just like to point out to remind BassEdge listeners that those are on the website, and if you haven't checked them out, please do so.
Yeah, they're all getting great reviews. I've been wearing the BassEdge Radio hat a lot. I want to mention to everybody, it's a Richardson 112 hat, high quality piece of apparel that we've got right here. It's super comfy. If you're a hat connoisseur, the Richardson 112 is the deal. So be sure you check that out. The other thing, which we haven't talked about in a few episodes, Aaron, is Jay McNamara's Psychology of Exceptional Fishing, also available on the website, getting great reviews. This is the revised.
I was going to say, that's the revised edition, right?
It is the revised edition. So maybe you've got some extra time. It's a great book to purchase and put on the back of the commode, and take your time when it comes time, and get to be a better angler when you have a spare moment. Just read through the book. It's a great book, so it's definitely one for the coffee table, or in my case, the back of the commode. So be sure to check that out. And a lot of great stuff on the website, Aaron. You're doing a great job. You're kicking butt there.
There's no me. It's Travis and Jackie and all the rest of the crew that does that. But
it's a great team.
Certainly appreciate them. And I'm excited about this episode, Kurt, because when you were talking to me and kind of running some thoughts on what we might do for the May 15th episode, we're kind of in that, right, that time of year where some are still in spawn, some are post-spawn, right, and so kind of that funk. But one of the things that I am not as proficient on and cannot wait, because I really feel like you are dealing a master's class, perhaps, with regards to bladed jigs.
Yeah, we've got the man in the house. You've heard of the jackhammer before, and we're going to get all the details. Man, vibrating jig, it is a big fish bait. There's no question about it. More times in the spring, I see social media posts. I caught this on a vibrating jig. I got this big fish on a vibrating jig. And we're going to learn more about other times of year to throw it, more about the possibilities, trailers, all kinds of great information. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to have an MLF BBT Pro jackhammer signature bait guru, Brett Hite, in the house. Y'all stay tuned. It's going to be a great Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight.
This is FLW Tour Pro Brian Latimer. This is Bass Pro Tour Angler Art Defoe.
Hey everybody, this is Pro Angler Kevin Short.
This is BASS Elite Series Professional Kelly J.
I'm FLW Tour Angler Scott Ashmore.
This is Professional Bass Angler Brad Hallman, and you're listening to BassEdge Radio.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
Aaron, I am jacked up about this episode's interview. So much looking forward to hearing from this MLF Bass Pro Tour angler, one of the best to ever come out of the state of Arizona, and there is a ton of great anglers from that state. He's been on the FLW Tour, Bass Elite Series, and as I mentioned before, now fishing the MLF Bass Pro Tour. A huge BassEdge welcome to professional angler Brett Hite. Brett, thanks so much for taking time to be with us on BassEdge Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. And, you guys do a great job, and I'm sure we're going to dig into some good stuff.
Absolutely, Brett. Again, just want to echo what Kurt said. Very pleased to have you with us. And as Kurt mentioned, just welcome to BassEdge Radio. And I've been really excited since Kurt told me that you were coming on for two reasons. One is having you as a guest. Secondly, just the topic that we're going to talk about because, in the area of kind of the bladed jig category, that's it's all about me. I'm going to be selfish right now because I'm not as proficient with that as what I should be. So I cannot wait to kind of dive into your signature bait, the jackhammer. And many of us are aware of, how effective you were and are with a chatterbait early in your career. How did the partnership with Evergreen and Marizo Shimizu come about with Z-Man and developing the jackhammer?
Well, I've been sponsored by Evergreen prior to developing the jackhammer. Marizo's been a good friend of mine since about 2002 when he first came over and started fishing what would be the Bass Opens now. And then we obviously went along and fished the top 150s. And then obviously the elites together. So just with my sponsorship with Evergreen, and that's his major sponsorship, we were at a point where nobody in the United States was making the right style bladed jig. There was flaws in it, and then there was, patent issues so that we couldn't really make the right one and sell it. So Marizo and I just came up with the idea that we were just going to have Evergreen make it. We were going to design it the way we wanted with the right hook and everything, and then pretty much sell it only in Japan. Well, at Winyah Bay at a Bass Elite event, I think that was in 2017 or somewhere around there. Don't hold me to the date, but I had a bunch of prototypes of this bait and ended up finishing second place. Brett Myers won the tournament. Well, on my way to another event, I believe at Bull Shoals Lake, I got a call from Daniel at Z-Man, and he's like, "Hey man, good job. I had to talk to you about this this jackhammer you're talking about. You really can't promote a bait in the United States that goes against the patent." I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry." But he's like, "Hey, what?" He's like, "It's no big deal. I'm just wanting to forewarn you, And then we had tried to make a relationship prior, and it just didn't really work out. They wanted me to look at a bait to put my signature on it, and I was just like, "No, if I'm going to put my signature on something, I'm going to, make it from the ground up."
It's going to be the Brett Hite, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something like I actually designed, instead of just saying, "Hey, do you want to put your name on this?" No, that's not how. So long story short, Daniel and I, we kind of came to discussion. He's like, "Hey, how about if we sell the jackhammer?" And I'm like, "Now we're talking." And
right.
I got that relationship hooked up with Evergreen and Z-Man, and it has been just spectacular. I mean, Evergreen's an awesome company, and so is all the people at Z-Man, and it's just worked out really, really well.
Love to kind of dive a little bit more into the business side of this aspect. So when you're looking at everything, as you mentioned, you got patent issues, you got two companies basically working together, one a Japanese company, one a US company. And then really it comes to, let's face it, okay, here's the price point on what Brett and Marizo want to put together to make this better than best vibrating jig, right? And they tell you, "Hey, Brett, love the bait, looks great. When you put all of this business aspect together, we're looking at a, MSRP or a MAP pricing of $15 to $18. And you can go out and buy a chatterbait at that time for $450, $550 ballpark is the price range."
Yep.
What goes through your head, your discussions? What are you thinking about? Like, holy cow, do I have a $17 bait right here? Can I make this work? Whether it works or not, you still got the bait you want, right? You've got everybody on board. You're actually making a vibrating jig that Brett Hite wants to use. Brett Hite loves to use. Brett Hite's going to crush the fish on it when he uses it, But from a business side of it, are you freaked out a little bit?
Yeah, Z-Man, what was funny in the beginning discussions and even my prior discussions before making the relationship with Evergreen and Z-Man, and I guess, I don't know, let's see here, 2014, we talked about it, and that's when it just didn't work out with them. And I kept on telling them they needed a high-end chatterbait.
Right.
And they're like, we came out with a chatterbait Elite. It's like $7.99. We just don't think we can sell them for that. I'm like, dude, if it's the right one, it doesn't matter. People buy $25 Megabass jerkbaits like they're going out of style. It does not matter. But we really wanted to try to get the price around that $12.99. But, you know, there's a lot of hands in the fire. And, you know, we set that price at $15.99, the 3/4 and the 1 1/4 at that $17.99. But, you know, I get it all the time. People are like, dude, your bait's like $20. I'm like, actually, that's the tackle shop doing that. The MSRP is $15.99. So don't blame me, you know. You can go up and find them for $15.99. But yeah, I knew after using the bait, you know, I probably had 1.5 years, 2 years of development on this bait, just making sure it's absolutely perfect. And I knew all it was going to take is for guys to get it in their hand, and it was going to sell. You know, there for a long time, the West Coast was kind of like the high-end bait market, and now it's everywhere. You know, people are buying $200 swim baits like they're going out of style. It does not matter if it catches fish. They're going to buy it.
Yeah, completely agreed. And the reason I bring that up is because from a business aspect, it's interesting for fans and bass fishing people of all shapes, sizes, forms, and interest levels to understand all the different things that happen behind the scenes when a bait is introduced, like the jackhammer. And when you have an exceptional bait like you provided the public in this scenario, because a lot of these baits, man, these are garage baits. What I mean by that is Brett's probably got some other baits in his garage right now that are awesome lures, but they're not available to the general public. This particular bait, he knew he could make awesome and decided to bring it to the general public, which quite honestly, Brett, is letting the cat out of the bag in a lot of scenarios, right?
Yeah, it has. It's a double-edged sword, you know. I mean, it was obviously really good for me and my branding. It really helped Evergreen kind of get on the map. I mean, they've been making phenomenal baits in Japan, and, you know, it really kind of launched them in the U.S. market, and obviously has really helped Z-Man out a lot too. So the benefits outweigh the non-benefits, you know what I mean? I was going to be using it no matter what, so the cat was going to get out of the bag just because so much spotlight's on when I have a bladed jig in my hand.
You bet. I remember when it first came out, people were like, man, you know, $16, $17, and then everybody's got like 50 of them. I mean, you go in my boat right now, I literally got like, you know, 8 or 10 3/4 ounce, like 5 or 6 1 ounce, you know, 20 half ounce, 23 1/8 ounce, and you know, all the different colors. I mean, dude, if you're out there running around and you're a vibrating jig angler, and that's something that you enjoy to throw and understand the big fish really attraction to that style of lure, dude, it is the one. So thanks for bringing it to us, man. I love it.
Yeah, no, thanks for buying them.
Yeah, I bet.
It's been kind of happy median about, you know, just trying to get enough. You know, it was funny, you know, they bought in, let's say, 150,000 pieces, and they were the first order, and it's like they were gone like in the first like 2 weeks, and they're like, we need to reorder. And you know how stuff overseas, it's not like, oh, hey, you know, it's, you know, you got to order like 6 months in advance. So, it's been kind of a struggle. And then obviously, you know, guys like Ott wins the classic on it, and you got Edwin wins the Red Crest on it. I mean, it's just been kind of, I mean, there's just been millions of dollars won on that bait. But, you know, we just developed our new stealth blade that I worked pretty much tirelessly on it for the last 1.5 years.
We're going to get into the stealth blade for sure, no doubt. Before we leave this price point deal, which I think is, just as an industry guy, really interested in, talk to the listeners about the technical differences. You know, you talked about Z-Man having an elite style bait that was a $7, $8 lure. We've got this one that, you know, the jackhammer, which is the Z-Man Evergreen cross promotion with you and Marizo. That's, you know, $15, $16. What are the differences, and what makes up that cost difference, and the special components that you've added to the lure to make it so great?
Yeah. So, first off, the head design's a little different. It's not tungsten. A lot of people think it's tungsten, but it is not tungsten. It's a lead bait. One of the biggest things that I really was adamant about is having a stainless steel blade instead of a tin blade. Original chatterbaits just use kind of a tin blade. So the stainless is a lot more rigid. It vibrates better. We're using a decoy double locking snap on there instead of just like a single lock Jensen clip. A hand-tied skirt, that takes a lot of time to do them right. And then Gamakatsu hook. They make a medium, a heavy, and a extra heavy flipping hook. So that, I think that's like the mid-grade level of the flipping hook. So it's kind of like a wide gap O'Shaughnessy bend hook in that, which, I mean, it's just awesome for chatterbait fishing. I mean, I like that hook on pretty much any bait. It has a double keeper on it. And, you know, we were really the first ones who, I was like, you know, you used to buy a green pumpkin chatterbait and it had a silver blade on it. I'm like, well, I've never seen a bluegill with a big old shiny silver head. I'm like, so, you know, we spent a lot of time finding, you know, it's hard to paint stainless and make it stay. So we match all our blades to the color of the bait. So if you have a green pumpkin jackhammer, you're going to have a green pumpkin blade on there. So it all matches. You know, it's just a quality piece. And, you know, I mean, it catches fish. So it's kind of a double whammy. You know, if you can have a good quality lure and it catches fish, everybody wins.
Yeah, good stuff. Brett, I would like to dive into the behavioral patterns and cover where you feel like it's most effective. Obviously, you know, like Kurt had mentioned, we see the lure used a tremendous amount in the bass pre-spawn cycle. Obviously, it's effective, but I would like to pick your brain a little bit on what other times of year and types of cover can it be found to kind of be at the top of your go-to baits and preferred use.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So I'll give you a little history. So when I first picked up a chatterbait was in 2007, and then in 2008 I won back-to-back FLW tour events, one on the West Coast at the Cal Delta and then one at Lake Toho. So I really thought that it was pretty much aquatic vegetation bait. You know, it's just, I was like, okay, that's what it is, you know, fishing grass, lily pads, stuff like that. And soon to find out, I catch them pretty much everywhere that you would throw a spinnerbait too. You know, like I go to a place like Lake Mead where it's just rock and stuff and throw the chatterbait and catch the heck out of them. So it's super, super versatile, whether it's clear water, stained water, muddy, pretty much any condition. If those fish are up in that water column where you can attract them with that thing, you can catch them on it. So I tell a lot of people who have never used a chatterbait that come up to me, I tell them, you know, are you guys used to throwing a spinnerbait? And they say yes. So I say, I explain to them, just throw it like you would a spinnerbait, you know, and I get a lot of feedback on folks being successful by doing that.
Yeah, I've also had people ask me, you know, especially guiding down at Lake Amistad, they might mention, you know, well, I've never caught a fish on a vibrating jig. And I'm like, well, you just haven't thrown it long enough. That's all that's happened. So let's talk about the different sizes. You talk about the fish kind of being up in the water column a little bit. You know, there's a very amount of jackhammer sizes. We've recently started to see, I think over the last like 2 or 3 years, more people using some of the larger size, you know, like the 3/4 ounce, specifically down in Florida, getting through the hydrilla patches and actually getting and running it across those hard spots, shell beds, those types of things. Can you kind of go through the sizes that are available and what conditions or scenarios you might like to throw a specific size in a specific situation?
Sure. So we'll start out with the 3/8 ounce. For me, the 3/8 ounce is like when I go to Florida, I go to the Potomac River, you know, fishing really pretty much super shallow grass, you know, any type of a natural lake where, you know, it's skipping under docks that are real shallow, stuff like that is really when the 3/8 ounce kind of shines. You know, going to the Cal Delta, something like that, where on the low tide, you just, you know, you got to get that bait up in the water column and you get some pretty aggressive bites where you actually, you know, they almost swirl on it. And then we go to the 1/2 ounce, and I'll tell the listeners, you know, I mean, the 1/2 ounce is what I throw most often. That's like what I tie on to just go fishing pretty much anywhere. You know, it's just a good all around, and then you can kind of tweak it from there. Whether the fish are up a little bit more, then I'll go to a 3/8, or they're down a little deeper, then I will go lead that into a 3/4 ounce. Now, a place like, let's say, Table Rock, you know, Aaron, you were talking about going fishing there, or Amistad, Kurt. I would throw a 3/4 ounce a lot just going down the bank. It just allows you to get in that depth range, you know, cast it out, maybe let it go to the bottom and 10, 12 feet and just start winding it back. And you're pretty much getting that bait in a completely different zone that not a lot of fish are seeing a chatterbait. Between Table Rock and Amistad, this fish is very similar to a lot of my Arizona lakes. I fish a 3/4 a ton.
So, Brett, would it be fair to say that you could kind of throw it maybe where you'd be chucking around a football jig and just kind of, throw it on the bottom and keeping it down lower, but maybe, in some of those same areas? Sure. Yeah. You can definitely throw it where you throw a football jig. You can kind of pump it like you would a football jig, kind of swimming it or stroking a jig. I really like kind of pulling it to the side at an upward swing instead of pulling it, straight up. Yeah. The side sweeping kind of upward motion. The biggest thing for me is on the hook set on a chatterbait, a side sweeping motion is way better than an upward worm style hook set. So if you can side sweep a little bit, and then when the fish actually gets the bait, you're in position to do more of that side sweeping hook set. So leading into that, we came out with 1.25 ounces, which is our biggest jackhammer on the market. And, it really, really works good. I mean, I've caught a lot of big ones. Let's say you have a flat that's 15 to 20 foot deep, cast it out there, and you can literally let it go to the bottom and kind of do that side sweep, upwards motion. And just, you feel it tick or thump, bump, 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 and then let it go back to the bottom, pull it till it thumps, let it go back to the bottom, pull it till it thumps, or you can wind it real, real slow too. So it's just such a versatile bait. You've seen, Kurt, on the Tennessee River, a lot of guys use a heavy bladed jig, with like a swim bait style trailer. Yeah. Here's a little trick. If the listeners, if you want to get your bait down a little bit more, take the skirt off. The skirt kind of lifts the bait up. So that's why you see a bunch of guys on the Tennessee River, they put that swim bait trailer on there without a skirt. It's just less resistance, and it just keeps that bait down a little bit.
Yeah, I've also found, and I'm sure you do too, Brett, and maybe you can expand on this a little bit, but how you place the trailer on the bait also affects its depth range. Whether, let's say you've got like a boot style swim bait, it might keep the bait up a little bit. And if you use something with, I'm thinking like of a Strike King Rage Menace, or I know you like that Yamamoto lure that kind of you can,
the Neko, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where it just doesn't have the lift, so it just keeps the bait down if you need to in the strike zone. How important does the trailer play in the action of the lure?
Yeah, it's huge. And the biggest thing is people, when they're putting a trailer on a chatterbait, you have to think of that chatterbait, it's like a crankbait, okay? So you need to thread that thing on in center of the bait as you can, because if you don't get the trailer centered on the jackhammer or any style of chatterbait, it's not going to run as true as it should. It would be like a crankbait being out of balance. So that being said, when I designed the Zako for Yamamoto, it just kind of has a forked tail. That's really kind of the style that I like most of the time, just because the bait itself has so much action. I want something subtle behind it. And like you said, if you put like some kind of kicking crawl or something like that on the back of it, it really raises that bait up in the water column. Right. And, we make a paddle tail Zako, which sometimes they want that heavier kicking motion, but still it seems like those crawl style baits, kicking crawl really brings that bait up in the water column. I want to keep it down, and I like that swim bait style profile, like the Yamamoto Zako.
Very cool. Man, this has been a great tutorial. Guys, let's power pole down for a quick break. We're going to be right back with more with MLF BBT Pro, Brett Hite.
Patented in 2000, perfected over years of testing and real-world punishment, the Power Pole is the ultimate shallow water boat positioning tool. Swift. Power Pole deploys in seconds from anywhere in your boat. Virtually silent. Power Pole won't spook wary fish. Secure in strong currents or gusting winds in up to 8 feet of water. Engineered to take it with a lifetime unconditional replacement guarantee on the spike. Power Pole. Swift. Silent. Secure. Visit PowerPole.com to find a dealer near you.
Bass Edge Radio is presented in part by ProtectTheHarvest.com as we return with MLF Bass Pro Tour Angler Brett Hite and the Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight. That's right, Lucas Oil High Performance Marine Products. Be sure to visit the BassEdge.com store for free shipping on all Lucas products. It works.
Brett, in that last segment, you started to get into this new stealth jackhammer. I kind of was like, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So here we are. We're going to talk about the stealth jackhammer. You know, we haven't yet quite seen it come alive in the mainstream tournament circuits as of yet, or at least no one's talking about it. You know how that works sometimes.
Yeah.
I've actually used it a few times. Again, going back to trailers, it seems like the trailer is really important to the type of action this particular lure provides because it is a very different bait than the traditional jackhammer. Help us with some info. How can we catch some more fish? And what is the stealth providing anglers?
Yeah, so I wanted something that was more subtle. You know, it still has vibration. I think that's the biggest misconception. Somebody ties it on and they're like, oh, it doesn't vibrate like a jackhammer. Well, it's not supposed to vibrate like a jackhammer. That's why we call it the stealth blade. So for people that don't know, it has a clear blade instead of a metal blade. The blade's a little bit smaller. We got a little bit less skirt material. We have a little bit thinner hook so you can throw it on lighter line and have good hook penetration. We have a nano-coated hook on it. So I just like, let's say like a good scenario, Kurt, is you fish the U.S. Open, you know, I mean, Lake Mead's a deep, you know, clear water reservoir. Some days you have high skies and no wind, and they just don't want to eat the regular jackhammer. It's just a little too aggressive for them. And that's really where it shines is, you know, those kind of scenarios. At least that's what I thought until really using it over the last year and a half or so. And I've found out, I mean, they bite it all the time. We've done some underwater audio with it. And when it's being reeled, it has a very similar sound to almost like a rattle trap. It almost has that shad sound in the water. So it's a bait that, I mean, it catches fish like crazy. I caught a 9-pounder on it last year, and it's heavy hitters. It's Lake Toho. So, I mean, you catch big ones on it. I really like throwing it on a little bit lighter line. You know, we're working on a new Zaco for it. It likes just a little bit thinner trailer and with not as big a belly. Everything just a little bit more finesse. And that, I think that's the biggest key to get out to the public is just a little bit. It's a finesse chatterbait, but it's pretty bad to the bone when you realize how much the bass like it. You were saying, you know, it really hadn't hit the mainstream. Yes, you are right. And you are right with, at least not anybody said. Yeah, exactly. Right. Because I've had some anglers call me and they're like, dude, that thing is pretty badass. You know, it's like, I'm like, I told you. But until they get caught on live, they're going to keep it under their hat.
So, you know, we talked about how the trailer affects the original jackhammer, I guess we'll call it. How about choices with the stealth jackhammer? Are you finding types of trailers are better or worse? Because I agree, you know, when you first throw it, you don't have the same vibration. So you realize quickly that, okay, this is going to be it's a different lure for a different condition, whether it's, you know, maybe high pressure or cleaner water, just less fish activity where they're not just as fired up to eat a more erratic type action. So talk to us a little bit too about trailers that you've seen successful with the stealth.
Yeah, like I said, it really, I just got some prototypes. Actually, what was funny, our original Zaco design was a lot thinner, didn't have as big a belly on it as the Zaco that we're having, you know, has been so popular on the regular jackhammer. So I had them dig out the original mold and shoot me some, and it's absolutely perfect on it. So it likes, you know, something like a fluke style bait, a small fluke style bait, something just a little thinner, not as big and bulky, you know, that just doesn't drag as much water because obviously you don't have as big a blade. So it just affects how it runs. But if you find the right trailer on there, it hunts naturally as good or better than the original jackhammer. I mean, it's just so natural. And you can actually just pick up the speed on the reel handle and it'll duck and dive, really do some erratic action. So I think that would be my biggest tip to people is, just downsize that trailer a little bit. Don't use as big a bulky a trailer, but, something in that small fluke, original fluke, or, fluke style bait, or even a smaller little pedal tail swim bait, something that's not real big and bulky, doesn't have a big belly on it.
Well, Brett, in this discussion concerning all things jackhammer, help us build the bridge on how you like to use, quite honestly, any of your chatterbaits now that it's kind of mid-May, getting into the post-spawn, early summer behavior patterns.
Kurt knows I'm like a green pumpkin guy. That's like my go-to, the chatterbait. But this is the time of year where I usually cut the green pumpkin off and tie on the shad one. The shad spawn is in full effect most places in the South, and this is a great time of year to throw that chatterbait. One of the great things about the chatterbait is it's one of the only reaction baits that you can skip really, really far under docks. I can skip that thing 40 feet under a dock. It's pretty hard to skip a flat side or a square bill 40 feet under a dock. So you're getting that reaction.
Maybe impossible, right?
Yeah, absolutely impossible. Yeah.
Maybe Thrifty. Maybe Thrifty could sport the, maybe he could toss or Andy Montgomery, one of those guys, right?
If they can't do it, nobody can. I can tell you that. But so you're getting a reaction bait that has that vibration like a crankbait or something like that up under those docks where those shad get to spawning up under those docks. And there's just not really any other reaction bait that you can get in those places like you can a chatterbait. So this time of year, I like to put on that shad pattern with the Yamamoto Zako and fish around all those marinas and docks and stuff where those shad are spawning. And then, I always paying attention because this is the time of year the bluegill start spawning too. So you're still going to have that green pumpkin on the deck because, as Kurt, like when those bass get on those bluegill beds, those brim beds, you can really do some damage quick.
Yeah, they start sharking them bad boys. You're in another league now, right?
Yeah. If you can get on those bass that are eating those, that are feeding on those brim beds, they're always the right ones. It's not always easy to trick them, but they're the right ones. So, and then obviously I'm going to have that 3/4 or 1.25 ounces on my rod for start fishing ledges too, fishing offshore. But primarily right now, it's going to be, like for this tournament, I'm going to have a shad colored stealth blade 1/2 ounce and a shad colored original jackhammer 1/2 ounce on, and then maybe some kind of 3/4 ounce to start.
Yeah, good stuff. Britt, I want to ping you one more question before Kurt takes us to the listener question. But, just curious, what other lures and techniques do you also rely on in kind of the post-spawn time of year? And what types of cover or structure are you looking for to target, better than average size bass?
Yeah, post-spawn, it's one of my tougher spots until they kind of get out there deeper. But, because so much of them, they're kind of in like no man's land. There's some still guarding fry. There's, some are roaming, chasing shad spawn. But, for me, it's pretty tough to beat a drop shot, just post-spawn, whether you're fishing along the bank or fishing offshore. It's just a great way. That and the Neko rig is just a great way to catch fish and catch good ones on it. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, drop shot, whatever. I've caught so many giant ones on a drop shot. And you catch lots of fish. So it's kind of a win-win.
No doubt. A quick question on that Neko rig. What size weight do you find? Obviously, depth range is going to play a deal with that. But let's say we're targeting some mid-depth type stuff, like 8 to 12. What kind of, maybe that first drop or those fish just hanging off those points in that post-spawn time frame, deeper docks, those types of things. What kind of weight do you find is effective on those Neko rigs? Now you got so many things to choose from. Do you feel like you've got it dialed to a certain degree?
Yeah, I pretty much always start out with Arc Tungsten makes a 3/32. That's a pretty good starting point. You're going to be able to feel that thing down there. Probably, I'll fish that to 20, 25 feet. and then I'll go to their heaviest one, maybe fishing some ledges with a big worm or something like that. But I pretty much always start right around that 3/32. It's something you'll be able to feel the bottom with. It's going to get down there. You're not going to have to sit there and wait for it. For me, putting on like a 5-inch Senko is pretty much kind of how it kind of started out on the West Coast, just using a 5-inch Senko. But I also like to use that big Yamamoto cuttail worm too, something with a little bit more action. But I would tell folks that don't know what size, start with a 3/32, and you can either go lighter or heavier from there, Kurt.
All right, great advice. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into the listener questions segment of the show presented by Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Paul Tiffany sends in this question. He's out of Minnesota. Brett, if you could help Paul with this question, he says, related to soft plastic swim baits, when would you want to fish it with a skirted swim jig, and when would you want to fish it bare? When is with the skirted jig, how thick should the skirt be? So some great questions there. Thought I was dialed in right for your answer. So let's hear what you got.
Yeah, it is kind of a little different thing, trying to figure out, do I use a skirt? Do I don't use a skirt? So what I would say, if you're trying to get that bait down in the water column, you're going to take the skirt off. Like we talked about on the jackhammer, when you have that skirt material, it's going to want to lift that bait up. If you want it to get up in the water column, you're fishing grass that might be only 3 or 4 feet deep or even shallower, you're going to want to have a skirt on it. And if you want it to get up or even higher in the water column, you're going to want to have a lot of skirt material. So just think of it like that. No skirt material, the deepest it's going to dive. You can do medium skirt material. It's going to get up a little bit higher, and then a lot of skirt material is really going to make a lot of buoyancy in that bait.
Well, Brett, very good advice for Paul, and appreciate you assisting him with his question. Paul, we do need one more thing from you, and that is to simply log on to BassEdge.com, click the Claim Your Prize tab, fill out the information, and we are going to get you the Bass Edge gift sent directly to your doorstep.
And as always, a reminder to Bass Edge listeners, keep firing in those questions. I mentioned this last episode, Aaron. The questions that are coming in are phenomenal.
They're
just
high
like
level, man.
They are, like this one from Paul. And no better way to have your question answered than through one of our Lucas Oil Angler Spotlight featured anglers like Brett Hite did for Paul today. So keep firing those questions to our Facebook or Instagram media pages, or simply email us to support@bassedge.com. Aaron, I also need to mention, you can go right to the bassedge.com website when you're downloading the podcasts, and there's a little tab there. It says Ask the Pros. So just simply click on that Ask the Pros tab. It'll fire you up a little question template and send it right in, man. We're going to get it on the show.
Perfect. Well, Brett, what a fantastic interview, and just really appreciate you sharing your time with us and certainly your knowledge on your insights concerning that. I feel like we just took a master's course in bladed jigs. So look forward to having you on the show again sometime in the future. But before we shut this down, any final thoughts or closing comments?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me and I seem to know a lot about the chatterbait. Whatever I say doesn't necessarily set in stone. It's just what works for me. So, there's, some people do stuff differently than I do, but this is what's worked for me. I've won over $1 million on a bladed jig. So I think I got some good credentials to try to help people catch more.
I think that makes you credible.
But
just a little bit.
The last tip that I would give them, and this is the biggest mistake I think people make with chatterbait fishing, is that they have a tendency to put it on a jig rod. You need to really think about the bait more like a crankbait. So I use a heavy action glass rod that Evergreen International makes. It's a Combat Series stick, but if you can't find one of those and you got a heavy action glass rod, mine's a 7.3, somewhere around there, 7 foot to 7.3. But just think of that bait more like a crankbait than a jig. That's the biggest misconception that people make. And that will allow you to catch a lot more fish on it landing wise and not lose them.
Very good info. I got to pop this out to you real quick. Fluorocarbon braided line. Sometimes I love to use the braided line, and I feel like that hard vibration gets some bites at certain times of the year, really like pre-spawn stuff. Are you always fluor, or do you sometimes mix it up?
Yeah, on what I'd call the OG jackhammer, right. I am always 20-pound test FC Sniper Sunline fluorocarbon. I mean, every day, all day, that's what I throw. Now on the Stealth Blade, you can throw 20, but I've been throwing a lot of 16 and 14 FC Sniper fluorocarbon. I'm a fluorocarbon guy. I've never had any issues. Some guys are just braid guys, which is fine. I mean, the jackhammer is built to withstand braid, and braided line. Now, the Stealth Blade, I probably wouldn't recommend that. It's got a little bit thinner hook. You might be able to get with some real light braid, 20 or 30 pounds, something like that. But I'm a fluorocarbon guy. That, like I said, that doesn't mean that's the perfect thing to do, but it's worked for me.
Awesome, man. Brett, it's great catching up here on Bass Edge Radio. We need to make some time, have a beer at our next camping spot.
That sounds great. You follow wherever we're going.
I can get a camper.
Come on, Aaron. We're going to have a party.
Yeah.
All right,
I promise I will not bowl a catfish in your camper, though.
Okay. I appreciate that. All right, guys, we're going to shut this thing down. Brett, thanks again so much for being here with us on Bass Edge Radio. We will be back for a little closing segment with Aaron and I just after this short break.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
The PowerPole Charge Marine Power Management Station is the most advanced system of its kind available on the market. It does the work of 3 devices, a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system, all in one compact unit. The Charge lets you run your boat's accessories the way you want to run them by allowing you to monitor and control your power usage through the PowerPole app. It automatically devotes power to the batteries that need it the most for maximum efficiency. The new Charge from PowerPole. Power where you need it, power how you need it, power when you need it.
Be at home with nature-inspired art, decor, and gifts by Wild Wings at wildwings.com. Explore art prints and canvas wraps of bass, trout, walleye, muskie, and more by acclaimed artists like Mark Cicino.
I primarily paint underwater scenes of game fish, and usually in a fishing situation, going after prey or going after a lure or a fly. I get asked sometimes whether I like fishing better or artwork. It would be tough to give either of them up. I can't really think of a good reason to give either up, so I'm going to stick with them.
Make your home, office, or cabin show off your passion for angling. Visit wildwings.com/BassEdge and sign up for an exclusive offer to Bass Edge listeners of 10% off your next order. Give something special to your loved one and be at home with nature. Visit wildwings.com/BassEdge. That's wildwings.com/BassEdge to get 10% off your next order of nature-inspired art, decor, and gifts by Wild Wings.
Kurt, it was a little unique interview in the fact that, sometimes we go more the how a person has done in an event or what's brought them success. This time we took a very deep dive, I think, into just the vibrating jig, the bladed jig, the jackhammer, so to speak. And I thought his explanations and, trailers to A to Z, I thought he did a fantastic job of covering that.
He did. Shame on us for not having Brett on, in the past, slap on the wrist for us. But yeah, man, fantastic interview. There's so many great anglers that lean on a vibrating jig. And, you can go back into the 80s and 90s and talk about a flipping jig and an archy jig and guys that leaned on that style of bait to do really well in tournaments. And you could say that there's a group of anglers, a pretty large group, quite frankly, that lean on a vibrating jig for their tournament success. I mean, I could think of Todd Ott, Chris Baumgartner, obviously Brett Hite, Brian Thrift in his early days, kind of one of his mainstays was, a vibrating jig, and I'm sure I'm missing a few other names off the top of my head, but it just shows the power of the lure and the actual expertise that can come from utilizing it in all kinds of circumstances. And Brett really laid those out for us today.
No doubt. And cannot wait to get out on the water and try some of those techniques and get going. But for episode 352, it is a wrap. Kurt, I look forward to seeing and being on the mic with you on June 1st, as I know that you will have another packed episode of knowledge and how to raise our bass fishing IQ. But we want to thank all Bass Edge Nation for tuning us in, and look forward to seeing everybody in just a couple weeks right here on Bass Edge Radio. For Kurt Dove, I am Aaron Martin. So long, everybody.
The Edge is presented by Megaware KeelGuard. For more information on Bass Edge or to shop at the Bass Edge online store, visit BassEdge.com. And be sure to join Kurt Dove and Aaron Martin right here on another episode of The Edge. Brought to you in part by Nitro Boats, Lucas Oil, ProtectTheHarvest.com, Mercury Marine, PowerPole, and Rapaholic.com.